Well, we've been talking about mental health and doing a series of different conversations around this. The most recent ones was around depression, but I wanted to bring one of our sisters in Christ back in to be on our podcast to share some practical examples of how she has struggled well with her depression, even anxiety or panic attacks, and how did her mindset around medications evolve and develop as she went through the process of recovery. Today, we're going to talk and continue on mental health, talking with my sister, Sarah. Welcome to Hope and Recovery. This is a Fellowship Celebrate Recovery podcast. It's a podcast that really helps us to face and deal with our mental, spiritual, emotional, and even relational health as we use this incredible tool called Celebrate Recovery based on the principles in Matthew chapter 5, the Beatitudes, where Jesus helps us to face the hurts, to learn how to walk in happiness, blessedness in spite of our circumstances, so that we can walk in the newness of life, to find purpose in our pain, to change those nasty core beliefs to healthy truths, and those habits to new healthy practices that ultimately bring healing to the relationships in our life. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I struggle with drugs and alcohol and perfectionism. My name is Rodney. I'm the pastor and ministry leader of Celebrate Recovery at Fellowship Rogers, and it's so good to be back with you here today. I want to keep sounding this gong. Please, if you can, help us by giving us a rating wherever you're listening to this, and a review. All those things help in the algorithms and just showing the traction of getting this out there. So please share this and give us a review and a rating so that we can reach more people. And we appreciate your feedback and your kind words that you're sharing on that. Excited to have this conversation of a sister we've had on before, previous podcasts, and she's agreed to come on around mental health to talk some more. So Sarah, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for letting me come and share.
Yeah. So introduce yourself and we'll jump into a conversation.
Yeah, I'm a grateful believer in Jesus. I struggle with anxiety, panic attacks, depression, and anger, and my name's Sarah.
Hey, Sarah. So Sarah, you and I have had some conversations around this, and what was the topic we did prior, you and I did together?
It was anger.
Anger, that's right. Yeah. So we did a podcast, and if you missed that, go back and listen to that. It was great hearing a little bit of Sarah's story. But Sarah agreed to come on, and you decided it was to come on and have a conversation around this. So we did a couple podcasts on depression recently, and we've done some different things, anxiety and that kind of deal. But kind of talking around just real practical. So anger was one that we talked about before, but depression, just around mental health. And we're trying to break the stigma around mental health. You know, mental health kind of gets a bad rap that somehow that we don't have enough faith, or, you know, all those lies, the stigma that surrounds mental health. And we're making good progress in breaking down that stigma. But depression. Tell me about your experience with depression, Sarah. What's that look like in your life?
Yeah, so thinking back, the first time I can remember really feeling depressed, I had just started college. It was probably 2003, 2004. Just really struggling with hopelessness, and at that point, I didn't know the Lord. So just really wondering, like, was life even worth living? I got to the point where I was having suicidal thoughts.
Wow. So kind of went to a dark place, and so you're feeling all these things. Are people aware of this? Are you keeping it in hiding? Tell me what the outside world knows versus what the inner world inside of you is going through.
Yeah, the outside world probably knew nothing. I was in college. I was playing college soccer, just trying to make everybody think I had it all together, and I was just falling apart on the inside. That's
a lonely place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the stigma issue, right? It's like, and I'm just curious, And I think I have some ideas, but what was your greatest fear in people knowing that you were struggling?
Yeah. So growing up, like I wasn't supposed to struggle. I was supposed to be strong, be able to fix my own problems. Yeah, just I shouldn't struggle was what was in my head. I'm too strong to struggle.
Yeah. So if you couldn't handle this depression on your own, that said what about you from your family system? What was the rule or the mindset if you couldn't handle this? What was that?
Yeah, I was weak. That was the first thought. I should be stronger. I should be able to pull myself up by the bootstraps.
Ugh, that's a cruel place to be. It's like, man, I'm already feeling like I'm in a mud pit, 12 feet under the ground, and now you're going to throw mud on top of me saying, just do better. It's like, ugh, that just doesn't sit right. So with that, though, you kind of had this cousin anxiety show up that had panic attacks, and tell me about how that played in. Was that a part in conjunction with the depression, or did that come later, or what did that look like for you?
Yeah, so the panic attacks came later. I thought I could fix my depression by like change of scenery. So I transferred schools, and the depression got better for a little bit. The panic attacks came in probably about 10 years ago. Just, it seemed like completely out of the blue. And at that point in my mind, I had never struggled with anxiety. I'm sure I struggled with anxiety and didn't know what it was, but I'd never had a panic attack before. And, I just really didn't know what it was. Came out of the blue.
Yeah. Yeah. Had you struggled well with the depression prior to this, or were you still battling the depression, or what was the sequence of that?
Yeah, so the depression seemed to come and go. When I moved, it got a little better, but they always say you can't move away from yourself, or,
wherever you go, there you are.
There you are, yeah. Yeah, so, the depression would come and go. It would get better, it would get worse. I actually, in about 2008, discovered that I had a autoimmune thyroid disease that was probably contributing to the depression. But knowing my background, I know that's not all of it. I've got a family history and just childhood trauma. But yeah, that was not helping. So they diagnosed me with that, got on some medication for that, and it seemed to get better. Yeah, it seemed to get better until the panic attacks came, and then everything kind of flooded back at the same time.
Like a big bowl of gumbo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's fascinating, just for our listeners to kind of take that in. Anxiety in itself, and kind of close connected with fear, but so it's, I like to think of it as this watchtower, right? Its job is in that part of my brain to get my attention. It's a signal saying, hey, there's something on the horizon that feels dangerous or scary or whatever. And a lot of times, just connecting with that, with the panic attacks, when we hear the signal in our body that says anxiety, and we say, hey, thanks for telling me, now go fix it. And that's not what its job is, right?
Right.
Its job is to tell us about it so that we can do something with it. And a lot of times we make anxiety go deal with it, and that's where panic attacks can come in. But it is interesting, Sarah, that the depression is kind of simmering underneath there, and with the panic attacks, everything kind of just came in full force. You've got this depression that you've learned, maybe it's connected to my thyroid, I don't know, but I've never been able to talk about my sadness. I'm weak. So I shove it down. And I'm not honoring my heart or my body in the way that it was designed to when I feel these things, to organize it, notice it, honor it, put it into words, and share it. So I shove it down. And the correlation of how that played into your anxiety and panic attacks is kind of the chicken or the egg kind of thing, right?
Right.
How do you make sense of that, just thinking about your struggles with depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and how that all works together?
Yeah, so having gone through counseling and recovery, I can kind of look back and put the pieces together. So I had been stuffing the depression. I had been stuffing a lot of childhood issues. At the time the panic attacks popped up, I was working full-time and going to grad school at a seminary. And I was also just in some other life struggles, and I think it was just eventually I couldn't keep stuffing it down. It had to come out.
Wow. So when did it become, you mentioned counseling and recovery. At what point did you realize I've got to get some help for this? My way of, even that narrative you mentioned, your family system, that, you should be strong enough to deal with this. But at some point you realized that narrative is not working, I'm guessing.
Right. Yeah. I had my first panic attack in June of 2014. I can still remember exactly where I was.
Wow.
It was life-changing. Since then, I keep waiting on, I would keep waiting on the next one to come. But yeah,
where were you? Just kind of take us on a walk through that, because that date just popped in your head. Was it June 2014?
Yeah, 2014. Yeah. So
what was happening around you?
Yeah, I was at an outdoor play, just having a relaxing evening, and they had just started the play, and I just had this feeling just kind of start in my chest and just intense. Having not had it before, I thought, did I eat something that's not setting? And then it just kept getting worse and worse. But yeah, that would have been June. And then I started having them more and more often until they were multiple times a week. And so finally, I think it was October. It took me several months of trying to just try harder.
Wow.
And until I finally realized I needed some help. I needed some professional help.
Yeah. And that's good. This kind of, I think I may have covered this on that depression podcast. I can't remember honestly which one, but that we call that hyper arousal, right? And it's this space of, and I don't know what some of those symptoms, jittery in my hands, my heart's racing, tightness in my chest. Some of those symptoms or more, what were some of the things you were feeling in your body? Yeah,
a lot of those, tightness in my chest, sweaty, hot, felt like for whatever reason I was about to die. I couldn't catch my breath.
Like you're having a heart attack or something. Yeah.
And even while that's happening at the play, I'm trying to make sure nobody knows what's happening. Ugh. So I'm still stuck in that. Nobody can know that there's something wrong. So
that feels so cruel.
Yeah.
I mean, you literally feel like you're dying, but I can't tell anybody.
Right.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Lonely place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to be confused. Am I dying? Am I having a heart attack? So how do you make sense? How did you kind of get to that path of, I'm not actually having a heart attack, there's something else going on? And what was that path for our listeners that may have those kind of symptoms and trying to find that path? What'd you do?
Yeah. I actually went to my regular primary care doctor first, and I told him I was having, I thought, hot flashes. He was like, no. And he kind of explained what was going on. And I still fought it for several more months before I reached out to a counselor. But yeah, and mine would primarily happen when I was alone at home at night. Before I experienced it, in my mind, I always thought panic attacks, and I would link it with social anxiety, or that's the only thing I had heard of. And
right.
And yeah, I could be in a group of people and be perfectly fine, but if I was sitting alone on my couch, it would just randomly hit. So
wow.
Yeah, it got to the point where I was struggling to work. That's really when I reached out. I thought I can't function like this.
So I would imagine, I mean, yeah, most of the time this happened when you were alone. Did that bring up a lot of fear to even go home and be alone? Just anxiety, thinking about anticipating the anxiety, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I live alone. So it was a struggle. I would think, if I pass out, nobody's going to know, and that's still some anxiety that I struggle with today. If I feel myself getting sick or having anxiety, and then it just makes it worse because I know I'm alone. And I think, well, nobody's going to know if something happens. And so then that makes it worse, and then the anxiety get worse. And
it's just a vicious cycle in it. Yeah. So at some point you said, all right, my primary doctor said, this is not hot flashes.
Right.
This is something else. Maybe you need to see a therapist. And so you finally say, okay, I'm going to make the phone call. What a courageous call you had to make.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in a seminary at the time, and they had a website that would link you with local counselors that had been at the same school. So, it helped to know that we at least had a similar background. But I do remember I had to call a couple of times and leave some messages before I got a response. So
that's not good.
Yeah, it was more than once that I had to get brave and make a phone call.
Wow. Well, I want to take a quick break there, and I want to. Yeah, that's a big step to make that call. It's good for our listeners that if you're struggling and needing to make that phone call, what a big step that was. But I want to talk about what that process and even some of those strategies that you've developed through the years as you walk through this, through counseling and recovery and struggling well with mental health. So talking to Sarah about mental health around depression, anxiety, panic attacks. And when we come back, we'll take a quick break. We'll continue the conversation. Stick with us. Hey, friend, if you are looking for a place to process any emotions, any pain, any struggles in your valley, your wilderness experience that you may be going through in your life, please don't try to face this alone. Come see us on a Friday night. We're at Fellowship Fayetteville, Fellowship Rogers. You can go to fellowshipcr.org, but we meet every Friday night. We'd love to have you join us. Come see us this Friday night. You don't have to do anything but just show up, and we'll welcome you and guide you along the way. Fellowshipcr.org for more information. Welcome back. Right before the break, I was talking to Sarah about the making that really courageous phone call. I'm guessing that phone, and I hate that you had to call a few times to finally get a response. We won't mention the organization that you reached out to, but that phone had to weigh 1,000,000 pounds, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I didn't even know what to say when I called. I can remember just calling and when I got to talk to somebody, just saying I had panic attacks and I needed to talk to somebody was really all I could get out at that point.
Blurted it out.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of courage. So you get an appointment set up, and your first appointment, scary?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm going to go talk to a stranger.
Right.
What was your experience with counselors to that point? These guys are weird. What was your mindset? It's like, I'm not sure this is going to work, or what was your mindset with this?
Yeah. So again, growing up, we didn't talk about anything. Yeah. So it was brand new to even think about talking to anybody. And I had seen a different counselor several years earlier when I was struggling with depression. I probably went 2 or 3 times. It was not a great experience. Remember her telling me at one point that she thought I should be a farmer. And I know, because I enjoyed gardening, and she was like, "Oh, you should be a farmer." And so I left, and that was basically my experience with counseling.
Not good.
Yeah. And so that made me hesitant to try again. But this next time I found a really good fit.
Good. So you start organizing. And so just getting real practical then, Sarah, obviously therapy, the process, just, have to trust the process. But what's some of the strategies you've learned, and we talked about this on prior podcasts, that you've learned about how to struggle well, I like to say, right? Because it's an ongoing struggle, but learning how to struggle well is key. What have you learned through the years that would be an encouragement for our listeners that may be struggling with a panic attack, anxiety, even depression?
Yeah. So you had asked about my first session. So I walked in, and I remember basically saying, I've got panic attacks. How long until I'm cured? were almost the exact words that came out of my mouth. And, I'm thinking I'll come 3 or 4 weeks, maybe a couple of months, and then I won't have panic attacks anymore. That's where my mind was. And
of course.
Yeah. And, and my counselor said, well, generally people, learn to manage it. And that was not the response that I wanted at all.
Not encouraging for you in that moment.
Yeah. But I appreciated the honesty.
Yeah.
And I've learned that that's really, at least for me, what it is. I've heard people say, God healed me of depression, or he healed me of panic attacks. And for me, it's been more of learning to manage it. I think he can do that, but he hasn't done it for me yet. So yeah, it's just learning how to struggle well with it.
Yeah. Well, and that's so important what you just articulated so well. The expectations is a big part of that equation, right? If I have expectations that I'm going to get to a point and never struggle again, then imagine how discouraging it is if there's any inclination of that struggle again. It's like it spins me out, right?
Right.
Yeah. So kind of setting the frame. This is going to be a process of learning how to manage it, to struggle well. What's some real practical, just getting real practical, rolling up our sleeves that you have learned just on what's a day in the life of Sarah through the years look like that have been real helpful for you to encourage our listeners?
Yeah. Yeah, so the depression it's really come and go. It's been seasons. The seasons that I've really struggled with it, just getting practical, I've had to tell myself, put your shoes on, just one step at a time. Put your shoes on, go outside, go for a walk, pick up the pace, go for a jog, do something that I always enjoy doing when I'm not depressed.
Yeah.
Is a real struggle in the seasons when I'm struggling with depression. So yeah, just learning practical tools like that to just get myself outside, get connected with people.
Yeah. What brings me life when things are going well, and then trying to be intentional to hit that right between the eyes when I'm in a bad spot.
Yeah.
Okay. What about anxiety? What does that look like, as you're trying to, but what do panic attacks look like for you now? Do you have them often? Is it few and far between? What's that look like?
Yeah, it's definitely few and far between, which is really encouraging. Like I said, when I first started having them, they were definitely multiple times a week, lasting a long time, really intense. I would say maybe I get one a year now. And the struggle with that for me was the solution wasn't try harder. It seemed like when I was fighting them in the beginning, the harder I tried, the worse they got. And so I just got to the point where I just had to give it to God.
Yeah.
And I can't, trying harder isn't fixing this.
Yeah. Well, in our prior podcast, we talked about anxiety. It's not fighting against it, but, working with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of what you're describing.
Yeah.
Just go with it kind of a thing.
Yeah. I learned to almost expect them to happen was making it easier. So instead of hoping it wasn't going to happen or sitting there and being afraid it's going to happen, it was, okay, what am I going to do when this happens? And so that really helped, just knowing like, hey, this might happen. It's happened before. I can breathe. I can get through this. I know what's happening.
Yeah.
That's really helped.
That's so good. So how has Celebrate Recovery been a part of you learning how to struggle well and manage this in a healthy way? What's that look like that you could offer for us?
Yeah, it's been a huge part of my recovery with mental health. And I remember it was a few years after counseling that I finally came to CR, and it took me several months to pick up a chip, but I was probably at my lowest point in my life when I took my first CR chip, and it was basically for not taking my own life. I remember thinking, my life is not my life, it's God's life. And so my life is not my life to take is what went through my head. And I picked up a blue chip that was probably 7.5 years ago.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, just sharing with people, and like CR has saved my life, changed my life.
Yeah, and on a prior podcast, I talked about this, that sometimes for example, depression, we think, well, depression, the first thing that comes to mind is sadness. Sometimes depression looks different, right? The opposite of depression is not happy. It's just a feel, right? And expression. And so having that community to be able to talk and express what's in your heart sounds like was a big part of your own healing journey.
Yeah. Just knowing that other Christians really out there struggled. It's my experience with church before CR was you didn't really talk about struggles. And then coming to CR and just hearing other people struggle with depression. You can be a good Christian and struggle with depression. It doesn't mean that I don't have enough faith or I'm not praying enough or... Yeah, that was big for me.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, because there's probably someone listening that's the mindset that they learned growing up. That, if you're telling us that, depression doesn't mean that I'm weak or have no faith. I'm just struggling.
Yeah.
And why would we, with any other struggle, say, well, you're struggling with this or that, but then we change the narrative when it comes to mental health. It's like, oh, but the struggle with this, that's a different ballgame.
Yeah. Or people throw Bible quotes or, Bible scriptures at you, the be anxious for nothing. I would cringe when I would know the topic of the church sermon was going to be anxiety. And
Yeah. Well, and good intentions, right? I mean, because I think sometimes we have to just understand. Sometimes if I see someone that I'm called to shepherd in the pit, and it's like, oh, my job is to try to guide them, and I see you in the pit. If I can just get you out of the pit quick, so we try to pop out of the place that they're in, that can feel cruel. I mean, positivity in itself can feel cruel if used in the wrong context.
Right.
Yeah. So you would kind of dread the teaching sermon for that day if it's
right.
Today we're talking about anxiety.
Right.
We're really talking about how you need to do better, Sarah.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, oh no, I don't think I'm going to church today. Yeah. But the reality is that, sometimes, and we talked about this with medication, Sarah, from your personal standpoint, sometimes we with any other part of our body, if we need medications, like, of course you're going to take that for your liver or your kidneys. But something about the brain kind of gets us messed up as Christians, doesn't it?
Right.
Tell me about medication and what's your heart and your mindset on that?
Yeah, so it took me several years of counseling to be okay with taking medication. It was one of our topics for a while because I had exhausted all my other options. I had done all the stuff that checked all the boxes. I was getting better, but nothing was really helping. And so in my mind, it was always medication's okay for other people, but I shouldn't need that. I can do it without it. And, like I said, it took years of talking about it until I finally gave it a try. And it took me several to find the right fit for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found one that I'm still on now and doing great, but still I still have to do all of the connection and exercise and.
Yeah, that's an important thought. Sometimes we can look at medication as a magic pill, and we don't want to use medication as a substitute for the heart work. And that's what you're saying, the connection, getting in community, talking about my emotions and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Sarah, so you're doing so good. I mean, so courageous and letting us into this part of your story. I know people are blessed by it. Somebody's listening that maybe they're struggling with maybe depression, maybe anxiety, panic attacks. Should I take medication? Whatever. What is Sarah, who's in the battle currently and struggling well? You have your ups and downs just like any other human being, but struggling well. What would you say to that person that might be struggling and just looking to cling to some hope? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say you're not broken. I remember feeling broken for the longest time. It was like I would hear people say, well, you go to the doctor if you've got a broken leg. So you go to you can go to a counselor if you've got anxiety and panic attacks. And I struggled with that because I thought, well, your broken leg heals. And for me, it was learning to manage it and struggle well. And so just knowing that you're not broken, when you do have days where you're struggling, like God still loves you. I've struggled with that. He's not forgotten about you. And I try to look for the silver lining in it. I feel like it's given me so much more compassion for other people who've struggled, because before I had anxiety, I thought, just quit worrying about it. And then once I've actually struggled with it, I realize, it gives me compassion for other people.
Wow. Yeah, and that's so good to hear that. That you're not alone in that, and don't try to face this alone. And as we talk often, that 988 is a great hotline to call if you're in a place where it feels overwhelming. And you said 7.5 years ago you were there.
Yeah, I was there.
Wow. Well, praise God, you're no longer there and you're still here.
Yeah.
And just knowing who you are. And by the way, an incredible baker wins all kinds of ribbons and contests, pie, cupcakes. You make just about anything, don't you?
Yep. Headed down next month for a national pie championship. But
well, and I'm Sarah's, for those of you listening, I'm her official taste tester. So all those ribbons, I feel like I have a part of that because, I gave you the thumbs. No, I'm just kidding. You're very gifted, but you're a great woman aside from that, from what you do, who you are. We love you and we appreciate you. So thanks for coming on and sharing a part of your heart.
Yeah,
today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And I hope that you listening today find some encouragement and hope in that. Sometimes that darn enemy will take some of those mental health struggles and try to convince us that we're less than because we feel different. Maybe we look different. But you are created in the image of God. That means His hope lives inside of you. You don't have to conjure up hope. His hope lives in you, and you. It's not just hope in God. It's hope, knowing that God is with you, that He's with you in the sorrow, and to experience His comfort is to know and experience the sorrow, and putting into words, using the tools, sometimes medication, sometimes counseling, Celebrate Recovery community. All of it works together to bring hope and healing. And I hope that you'll take that step. If you'd like more information, you join us at Celebrate Recovery. Go to fellowshipcr.org. Hope you'll join me next time. Thanks for being with us. God bless.